Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 2 2020 NFL predictions. Well, I am so excited that the first week of football is about to close, and it was so exciting over yesterday and Thursday to watch all the games through Week 1. There was a lot of things that surprised me, there was a lot of things that disappointed me, there were a couple things that shocked me, and everything in between. And I'm just happy that the football season, through at least week 1, has gone without a hitch. And I also, just because I know that I also read yesterday that every single player and organization member across all 32 organizations were tested, and nobody came back positive for the virus, which is a huge victory for the NFL moving forward. And hopefully, like the NBA and Major League Baseball, they can, or National Hockey Leagues, excuse me, they can have consistent weeks with no tests coming from anybody in any of the organizations. So it was really exciting to have football back. Though, when it comes to my picks, this week I would have to say for the return, it was a mixed bag. Against the spread this week so far, I am 5-8-1, and straight up I am 8-6. So that equals to about 33 and 57% respectively. Tonight's two games, as a reminder for the doubleheader from Monday Night Football, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers -5.5 against the New York Giants, and I have the Denver Broncos and a pick'em against the Tennessee Titans. And these were the picks I made for Monday when I made the video. I know the lines have changed, the Denver ones, but those are lines I'm going to stick with for my predictions for the video. So I can, live with if I get both straight up games right at 10-6 at 63%. I usually try to get double digits every week. The against the spread lines are just kind of crazy because I think that for anybody looking at the Jaguars and the Washington football team, if you were to tell me that after 1 week of football that they would be leading their divisions after beating a division rival in a pretty decisive or pretty good fashion, I would have laughed. But congratulations to both the Jaguars and Washington for getting big victories. I was especially shocked by Jacksonville because I thought with everybody that left that they weren't going to be able to pull out a victory. But that's a testament to Doug Marrone, Gardner Minshew, and that team for showing people that we're not going to lay down. And with what I saw at Indianapolis Colts and Marlon Mack's Achilles tear, along with what I saw at the Houston Texans and what problems they have lie ahead, I will have to tell you, depending on how the Jaguars do next week or the next couple weeks, I do think the Jaguars will be a player in the AFC South moving forward, which is shocking, realizing how much talent's left that team. And then you look at the Washington football team. That was a story of where the Eagles got up to a massive 17-point lead, and then at the end of that, it was just where when Carson Wentz threw his first interception to safety Fabian Monroe, that was the turning point in the game because the Washington football team was able to score to get it to a 10-point game, and then they just kept having more turnovers, and the offensive line was battered and tattered through all the injuries in the game before. They gave up 8 sacks on Carson Wentz. Carson they really couldn't get to the tight ends. Well, they couldn't get to their main tight ends. That Dallas Goedert had a 100-yard day, but I digress. They really couldn't get any other big receiving plays from anybody outside of Jalen Reagor. And that was incredibly impressive. And Haskins played an okay game where he didn't have a turnover, and he played about 50% of his passes. But when you have a defensive front like Washington's, which you're getting turnovers and consistent short fields, you will take that from your quarterback to help you, get in a good spot. And then you look at a lot of, some of the other games. Tampa Bay, Tom Brady's debut did not go as a lot of people thought. He looked a bit up and down. There was kind of a shocking stat line. I think I said that between the two of the better receivers in the National Football League, Mike Evans and Mike Thomas, both combined only had 4 receptions for 19 yards and a touchdown, and that came late. And the Saints were just kind of beating him on the ground too. Kamara had 4 rushing touchdowns, and then Tom Brady with his 2 costly picks, one to Marcus Williams and the pick 6 to Janoris Jenkins. Those are really kind of the turning points in the game, and the Saints from those moments really never look back. I think the Saints, look, they're going to be one of the best teams, and arguably if they can keep playing with their running game, if Breeze can still play efficient, they could get to the Super Bowl. But I'm not as concerned about Tampa just yet because I do think that if there was an off-season or there was more contact in preseason, I do think the Bucks would have looked better. But that's why I think the Saints last week because they were also at home. So, and then you have the Rams Cowboys game with Mike McCarthy's massive blunder, going for the draw on 3rd and 6, and then going for the shallow cross on CeeDee Lamb, which blew my mind. But I do have to say the Rams defense was impressive They got a good amount of pressure on Jared Goff. Jalen Ramsey had a fantastic game, limiting the Cowboys wide receivers. Blake Jarwin, though, unfortunately, he blew his ACL, and Leighton Vander Esch, of course, fractured his collarbone. So they're going to be out for Jarwin for the year. Vander Esch out for an extended amount of time. And it's just kind of another look. As things change, things stay the same. The Cowboys now are on 1-8 over the last 2 years in one possession games. Only the Cincinnati Bengals have a worse record in one score games because they have not won a one score game in the last 2 years. They are 0-9. And I'll talk about the other games as I go through my week 2 picks. All right, so here are my week 2 picks, everybody. So this Thursday, when the 0-1 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 0-1 Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Browns are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Cleveland here to win straight up, but give me the Cincinnati Bengals +6. Then the next game, when the New York Giants go to the 1-0 Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears are 5.5-point favorites in this game. I like Chicago here -5.5 in Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Atlanta Falcons go to the 0-1 Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys are 6-point favorites in this game. After what I've seen from both these teams yesterday, I'm going to go with the upset here in both categories. So give me the Atlanta Falcons here +6 and the Atlanta Falcons straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Detroit Lions go to the 1-0 Green Bay Packers, the Green Bay Packers are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here -6 and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans are 11-point favorites in this game. I like the Tennessee Titans here to win straight up, but give me the Jacksonville Jaguars +11. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Minnesota Vikings go to the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts are 3-point favorites in this game. I am going to go with the upset here. I believe it was a 3-point line because the Colts were the home team. But give me the Minnesota Vikings here +3 and Minnesota Vikings straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Buffalo Bills go to the 0-1 Miami Dolphins, the Buffalo Bills are 5.5-point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here -5.5 and Buffalo straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 San Francisco 49ers go to the 0-1 New York Jets, the San Francisco 49ers are 7-point favorites in this game. I like the San Francisco 49ers here -7 and the San Francisco 49ers straight up. And then the next game, when the 1-0 Los Angeles Rams go to the 0-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Just like Minnesota and Indianapolis, I love that the Rams are getting the points here, and I'm going to lay the points on the Rams. So give me the Los Angeles Rams here +2.5 and the Los Angeles Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the Denver Broncos go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is a game where I've obviously from this video, from when it comes out, I will not seen both the Broncos or Steelers play due to Monday night. So I went with the Pittsburgh Steelers here to win straight up, but I have some confidence in Denver, even though I know about the defensive injuries. Then I'm going to take Denver here +6. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Carolina Panthers go to the 0-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 8-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here -8. Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Washington football team goes to the 1-0 Arizona Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I like Arizona here -6.5 and Arizona straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Kansas City Chiefs go to the 1-0 Los Angeles Chargers, the Kansas City Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites in this game. I like Kansas City here -8.5 and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Baltimore Ravens go to the 0-1 Houston Texans, the Baltimore Ravens are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I like Baltimore here -6.5 and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, the Sunday night game, when the 1-0 New England Patriots go to the 1-0 Seattle Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks are 4-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle here -4 and Seattle straight up. Then finally, in the Monday night game, the debut for the Las Vegas Raiders, Allegiant Stadium, the 1-0 New Orleans Saints come to town, and they are 5.5-point favorites in this game. I like New Orleans here -5.5 and New Orleans straight up. All right, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Cleveland Browns over the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a game where you could say, after you watch Week 1, why are you going with the Browns? You just saw them play the Ravens and look absolutely pitiful in all phases of the game. Botched fake punts. Nick Chubb only had 60 yards rushing. Baker threw a pick on the first drive of the game. Odell only had three catches the whole game. The defense was getting shredded by Lamar on deep throws, tight end movement. J.K. Dobbins had 2 rushing touchdowns, and the Browns were probably the worst team out of expectation and execution in the entire league so far in week 1. I just think when I look at the Browns, I just feel like that we were a very good team, the Ravens itself, and I think that the Browns, like, they always somehow seem to play lesser competition. And I know the point back would be that also the Bengals in Week 17 with Andy Dalton, that was the last game that they played in Cincinnati, and they beat them. And the Bengals, this time around, they looked somewhat better. Joe Burrow threw for about 230 yards. He had that big 20-plus yard touchdown run, which I thought was impressive. And that defense did a pretty good job on a talented Charger offense. They limited Tyrod pretty well. Mike and Keenan did okay, and they only held them to 16 points. And if it wasn't for Randy Bullock blowing his hamstring out, they probably could have tied the game. But I just have to look at the Browns here and just say that if they have any hope, or if they just want to show that they can, maybe elevate themselves to a level to where they're not laughing stocks, they need to beat this Bengals team, and I believe they will. I think they're going to use the motivation from last year. Most of those guys are there. The Bengals, they had some odd moments. Also, the Browns, I think they have better receiving talent. Baker's played pretty well throughout his career against the Bengals in over the last 3 years. Do I think the Bengals could win? Absolutely. I think Joe's brought some confidence. AJ Green's back. He looked pretty good. Joe Mixon can obviously run they can run through with Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard. They have Tyler Boyd and Tate and Higgins. And Azuma had some big plays. And I think with what Mark Andrews could do, Azuma could do some of the similar things for the Bengals against Cleveland. For me, like, the Browns should win this, because I just think if they have any hope, or Baker has any hope moving forward as the quarterback for the Browns, he needs to win this game after such a pitiful performance against the Ravens. I'm not saying that he is not going to maybe consistently keep doing that, how they're going, but if he gets beat out by the number 1 overall pick from 2 years ago, I'm just going to leave this cryptic little sentence here. I think it is time for the Browns, if he loses to the Bengals in a bad way, just like he did, it is going to be time to start making a new case for change. And I will just leave that there. And hopefully people, when I say the word case, it may be time for the Browns to make a new case for change. So that's why I like the Cleveland Browns here straight up, but I'll take the Cincinnati Bengals +6. The next game, the Chicago Bears over the New York Giants. I am taking the Chicago Bears here because I have to tell you, that fourth quarter from the Bears was really impressive. Trubisky had one of his better games in a while. He had that big 25-yard touchdown to Anthony Miller, which was really good. The Bears defense clamped down the Lions offense. They got the pick on Matthew Stafford, which I thought was huge. They were able to run the ball, effectively, and they built a momentum that I think is tangible, and was impressive. It was the first time the Bears they put up 21 points in a quarter, the first time in 6 years. And I like what the Bears did defensively. They held the Lions offense pretty well even through the first half. I know that the offense really didn't do that well, and there was a point where Trubisky had 1 or 10 yards throwing. But I just like what the Bears defense did to the Lions offense, and I look at the Giants offense, and Golden Tate's dealing with a hamstring injury that may not make him play tonight, and the Giants offense is not nearly as talented or as much depth compared to the Lions. So I feel like the Bears should be able to hold on and play a similar style of game. And I also know, and let me look here, these two teams played last year, and I believe the Bears won as well. It was a little more sloppy of a game, but let me see here. The Bears did play the Giants in week 12 last year. They won 19-14. So I feel like if Trubisky can build from his, this previous game against the Giants defense, which, look, DeAndre Baker's not there. The defensive front's kind of up and down. Leonard Williams is playing on a tag. They have some other, decent pieces. James Bradbury. And this Giants team just kind of all brand new. They don't have Nate Solder left tackle, which would be huge for Khalil Mack and the Bears pass rush to go after. The Giants offensive line. And Daniel Jones has had fumbling issues. And he really didn't look that well against the Bears defense last time they played him. And I don't see that much difference if Trubisky can maintain or play at an okay level in this game at home against a Giants team that's just trying to be competitive and look decent. Could the Giants maybe make a run? Let's see. They could if they play well against Pittsburgh. They definitely could play well against the Bears. Similar types of structures and teams, obviously different talent wise, with Big Ben and Mitch and different types of offenses. But if they could play well against the Steelers, they definitely could match up well with the Bears as well. And I just have more faith in what Nagy and Trubisky did at the end of that game to tell me that they should be able to duplicate that against a weaker team in the NFC and the New York Giants. Should be an interesting game though, especially how the Giants do. If the Giants play well tonight. So that's all like Chicago Bears here, -5.5 in Chicago straight up. The next game, the Atlanta Falcons over the Dallas Cowboys. This one you could argue, you could say to me, well, maybe Matt, you're overreacting to the Cowboys. And yeah, maybe you could say I am, and you could look at the Atlanta Falcons and go, look, Matt Ryan put up a bunch of yards. He put up 2 touchdowns. Calvin and Julio at over 100 yards each. Todd Gurley only ran for about 50 yards, and the defense kept getting shredded by Russell Wilson. And you could argue that Dak has better receiving talent, even though Blake Jarwin tore his ACL. So they're going to have to rely on Dalton Schultz, their backup tight end, going for the rest of the season. But I like the Atlanta pass rush, and they had moments where they got Russell Wilson down on the ground and got some good pressure on him. And I saw the same thing with the Rams, and I just don't think Dak Prescott is as athletic and as sharp on his feet under the rest as Russell Wilson is. And I just like what the Atlanta offense did through the air. And I look at that Dallas secondary, and I don't think Atlanta doesn't run a lot of the sweep motions that Sean McVay does, because that was primarily what the Rams offense was last night, was that it was just basically them just running with Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers and then just sweeping out Cooper Kupp or Tyler Higbee or Robert Woods and going and getting Goff in motion to throw those motion routes. So Atlanta's not that type of offense, but I just feel like the offense that they have, they can, hold up okay and put pressure on Dallas' defense, definitely in the secondary. And with no Leighton Vander Esch, Cam Irving, the offensive line looked like it had some issues, and especially when you lose Travis Frederick to retirement. Now you have Cam Irving, one of the other starting guards. I don't think he came back in the game. When you just have Ty Smith, as your Ty Smith and Martin, there is some holes in there that you have to be careful of for the Cowboys. And I just feel like, again, like the Atlanta Falcons, the game was weird because there was some just weird miscues. Young Hoku missed an extra point. I'm surprised he was still the kicker for the team. And I will take Dan Quinn in this matchup. I think the Atlanta Falcons, they're going to play a little bit better. I think Todd Gurley can run through some of the Dallas defense. He did it with the Rams a couple years ago, so he's played this defensive front for the most part. And I just think that Mike McCarthy and Dak, they're not going to be able to do what Russell Wilson did with the talent that he had compared to what they had. I just don't think they're going to be able to execute offensively like Russell Wilson does with the passing attack that he has. Because Russell Wilson went 31-35 for 300 yards and 4 TDs. I don't expect Dak to do that, and I also don't expect the Atlanta defense to give up that many points to a Dak-led team with Cooper and Gallup as your main targets. Even though I do have to say Zeke did pretty well. Zeke and Pollard had a nice running attack, but the Atlanta Falcons did a pretty good job holding the running attack down to an extent. So I think that'll be the game plan. But I think just the Falcons' offense will be a little bit too much for the Cowboys, and the Cowboys' offensive line problems will continue thanks to Atlanta's pass rush. So that's why I like the Atlanta Falcons here, +6, and the Atlanta Falcons straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Detroit Lions. This is a fairly easy game because Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, he put up one of his better games of the year, 400-plus yards, 4 TDs. Davante Adams had probably the best day behind DeAndre Hopkins at fantasy, over 100, 50 yards, 2 TDs. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 93 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones looked okay, and they put up a fantastic offensive display against the Minnesota Vikings defense, or what was remaining of it after everybody left. And I just look at the Packers, and I also look at the fact that they're home. And the Lions, I know over the last couple of years, Matt Stafford's been able to go into Lambeau, and I think won 2 of the last 3 games in Lambeau. But after what I saw against the Chicago Bears. There is just so much wrong with the Detroit Lions. It's, kudos to Adrian Peterson for being a 35-year-old running back on his fifth team and outplaying both young guys at in Detroit and Carry-On and DeAndre. He's starting to become the Serena Williams of running backs, or especially in Detroit, where it's bad where the 35-year-old is the best thing going for you, then your rookie and your third-year guy can't even do anything. And a lot of people are going to blame DeAndre Swift, and there is a good amount of blame that goes to him for dropping the ball that could have won them the game. But I'm just going to mention this right here. I am done with John Matthew Stafford. Okay, Matthew Stafford threw a horrible interception. There was in double coverage that got tipped and Fuller picked it off. Why are you attempting a throw like that in that situation where you have the lead by 4 in this game? And nobody's going to talk about that, but I am. And I genuinely believe Matthew Stafford, or John Matthew Stafford, anybody out there didn't know that Matthew's not his real name? Not like me. John Matthew Stafford, he is a coach killer. And I'm going to tell anybody out there, and shout out to, Happens Picks, great product, the big one, to any Lions fan out there. I would tell every one of those coaches, don't take the Lions job when Matt Patricia likely gets fired. Don't take it. Because you're going to have so much dysfunction. You could argue, look, you have Marvin and Golden and Danny and Kenny and all that stuff. But you still have Matthew Stafford there. John Matthew Stafford there. And he is the biggest crux of this team's problems. And if the Lions, if they continue to blow games, and I've seen their schedule, if they are in Trevor Lawrence territory, they seriously need to consider trading up to getting Trevor and trying to trade John Matthew Stafford away. Because I've seen enough of that, John Matthew Stafford. Okay? He had an okay game, and it was DeAndre Swift's main, that's going to be the main thing. But people are going to completely forget that John Matthew Stafford, in the clutch again, choked the game by throwing a tight pass and a double coverage that got tipped and got picked up by Kyle Fuller. And just for everybody out there, Trubisky outplayed Stafford by a mile by the end of the game. I know it's a quarter, but hey, the fourth quarter is where you get business done. And that's where I'm just done with John Matthew Stafford and the Lions franchise, or for right now. And Patricia's going to be gone by the end of the year. He may not even make the end of the year if they keep blowing games or keep losing like that. And I just think to get back to the Packers, their defense kind of had some ups and downs. Jair Alexander had a big pick, but they lost Kenny Clark to an injury, so let's see how that goes. But I don't think it's going to be necessary. I think the Packers, they're just going to be able to move the ball against the Lions defense. If Rodgers can do that against the Vikings secondary, and Trubisky did what he did, Aaron Rodgers can do the same exact thing, and the Packers will get this victory. And also, I just think, again, they're in Lambeau, and I think over the last, 25-plus years, the Packers have won, 20 to 21 of the last 26 years when the Lions come to Lambeau. So that's the other big stat I'm going to use to go with that one. So that's all I like. The Green Bay Packers are -6, and the Green Bay Packers straight up. The next game, the Tennessee Titans over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I will say this right now. Doug Marrone and the Jags showed a lot. Gardner Minshew, 19 to 20. He's the third quarterback to have 95% completion percentage in a game, minimum of 20 attempts. Drew Brees did it last year against Indianapolis. And they just looked really good. They fought really well. Sharp made some big plays. Keelan Cole had the 22-yard touchdown. The Jags were able to run the ball well. They got 2 picks from Wingard and Henderson, their first-round pick from Florida. And the Jags showed you that, they're not going to lay down. They're not going to lay down, and they're going to prove to everybody that maybe they can still play. And maybe Doug Marrone can save his job. But I gained a lot of respect for Jacksonville or Doug Marrone and that staff after watching how well they played, how hard they fought in all facets of the game, and the coach just kind of looked awkward and clunky. Rivers threw 2 picks. I just think the difference for this one to me is that it's the Titans, and you have a younger Tannehill with more, a more younger Tannehill is a little more mobile, a little bit more efficient, a little bit more careful with his decision making, and you have Derrick Henry, who has killed the Jacksonville Jaguars game after game after game after game. And I think with the Titans' offensive line, most of those guys still there, even though I want to see how they do on the right side of the line. With Jack Conklin not there anymore, I just think the Titans are going to be able to run the ball effectively. I think Tannehill is going to have an efficient game, and I just don't see McClowney there now to pair with Beasley. I know he's not playing tonight, but he could play next week. You have Simmons there. You have Byard. You have a better secondary to play with and a more efficient quarterback in Tannehill. Do I think the Jags could they win? Maybe they could. I didn't think they win one game, or I didn't think anybody thought they could win a game against some of these better teams. So the Jags they have a chance, and that's why I'm taking them plus 11. I think people need to give the Jaguars some more respect and put them at least I think with about 7. I think double digits after what you saw against the Colts team that had one of the better offensive lines out there. But I'm going to take the Titans. I just think Derrick Henry has had consistent success against this team. Tannehill is not nearly as mistake prone. He's a little bit younger, more efficient. They have a little bit, most of the defense is back there, and I don't think that Gardner Minshew will be able to go through the Titans secondary, unlike he was able to do the Colts secondary yesterday. Should be an interesting game though, and I do think the Jags, they can make it fun. They're able to beat Indy, they can beat the Titans because that division's pretty much close in a lot of ways. So that's why I like the Tennessee Titans here straight up, but I'll take the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 11. The next game, the Minnesota Vikings over the Indianapolis Colts. This, to me, was the fact that the Colts had Phillip Rivers, and I had a lot of expectations for the Colts. I didn't pick them to win the division because of Phillip Rivers, and I just didn't think I'd be right that quickly after 1 week. They also lost Marlon Mack to a torn Achilles, which is a huge blow. I know they have Nikhil Hines and Jonathan Taylor, so maybe the running game will be okay. But after just what I saw out of Indy, like T.Y. had 2 big drops, and kudos to him for pitching after the game. Jack Doyle had an up and down game. Nobody really else had big plays for them. I don't think the Vikings defense, I think, did an okay job against Jones and the offense, but you're playing 2 totally different quarterbacks and 2 totally different offensive systems. The Colts really only have one primary weapon. The Packers have Jones and Adams, and they have more tight end. They have Sternberg, and I just think again it's just a different quarterback matchup. And I think Kirk Cousins going up against this Colts defense, if Gardner Minshew can complete 95% of his passes with the weapons he has, even though the Vikings don't have Diggs anymore, Thielen had a pretty good game. Dalvin Cook will be able to run the ball pretty effectively against the Colts defensive line. And I have to go with the 1 o'clock start too. Kirk Cousins always against kind of these lesser teams always plays pretty well in these games that nobody really is going to pay attention to besides the fan bases. And I just like what the Vikings did to show offensively, even though it was in garbage time. They showed a lot more offensive firepower that I don't think the Colts can really handle. And I just don't think defensively either. Without Marlon Mack, I don't think they're going to be able to generate enough running game. And Rivers is just going to keep making a few tough mistakes against the Vikings defense, which is going to be ticked off after giving up 43 points to the Packers. So that's why I like the Minnesota Vikings here, plus 3, and the Minnesota Vikings straight up. The next game, the Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. This one is fairly simple based on the fact that the Bills are basically playing a carbon copy of the team that they just played, except I said this analogy to some of my friends, and I'll say it to everybody who's watching now. The Jets and Dolphins spent a lot of money in the offseason to get a lot of different players, or they spent money to get some pieces to try to improve. The Jets just spent a lot of money, and they didn't improve at all. The Dolphins spent a lot of money, and the guys that they got should improve their team, but they're all just overpaid. So, what that statement was for me was just basically say that I looked at the Dolphins and said, well, Fitzpatrick, he threw 2 interceptions. He looked like Ryan Fitztragic, and that's unfortunate, but that's Ryan Fitzpatrick. And Brian Flores, after 1 game, he's not going to pull Fitzpatrick right away, though I do think if he does that again, this time against the Buffalo defense, which was lights out against the Jets offense, they got Le'Veon Bell out of the game. They hurt him inadvertently. Sam Darnold really couldn't throw that well. He was about 80 yards, I think, through halftime. The Dolphins don't have a lot of, I think, interesting big talents. Devontae Parker left the game in the 3rd quarter, so he may not be able to go. And I just was really not impressed with how limited the Miami offense was. And if the Bills defense can do that to the Jets offense, they can do very similar things against the Dolphins offense in a lot of the same ways. Do I think the Dolphins can make it a little more competitive? Sure, they could. I think the Dolphins are in a spot where they have a little bit of an expectation, but who knows? But I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here just because I feel like they're playing a carbon copy of the same team they played in the Jets, just a little bit better coached, a little bit more veteran laden, and I think the Bills get this victory in a fairly easy game. So that's like the Buffalo Bills here -5 and the Buffalo Bills straight up. Then the next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the New York Jets. This is one where the 49ers, they did so well, like in the beginning of the game. They got Raheem Mostert an 81-yard touchdown pass, and they were up 10-0. And I thought the Niners were going to go start steamrolling over the Cardinals. And boy, was I wrong, because I watched the rest of that game, and the Cardinals defense showed up. The Arizona Cardinals offense showed up. Kyler Murray had 230 yards passing, 90 yards rushing, and a few touchdowns. And the secondary was just getting ripped by DeAndre Hopkins, who had a career-high day in receptions. Oh, and by the way, he caught more receptions for the Cardinals by himself than the Houston Texans' whole wide receiving corps did on Thursday. So that's just a fun little fact there for Texans fans to have to realize. But the Niners, though, they're playing a different team in the New York Jets, who are not nearly as effective, in my opinion, than the Cardinals were. I think the Niners should steamroll the Jets in a lot of ways. They have a lot of, inconsistencies. They're going to be at home playing a team that's ticked off. Kittle's going to be back healthy. Garoppolo's going to play an efficient game. And the Niners aren't going to need a lot in this situation to really be concerned moving forward. And I just think it's not going to be fun. I just think the Jets, their days could be fired by the middle of the year. And honestly, I look at it going just not in a good way. So that's all like the San Francisco 49ers are -7 and San Francisco 49ers straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to take the Rams here just in the sense that I look at the Rams because from what they did defensively against the Cowboys, and I look at the Eagles offense and I say there is a lot of similarities there that's going to cause the Eagles a lot of problems. The defensive line looked really good. Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, Ebukong. They didn't miss Littleton at all. And I just look at the Rams and say, what are you going to show in a game against the Eagles that the Eagles, had problems with before? When you look at the Eagles, gave up 8 sacks against Washington. I can see a similar type of thing with the Rams' defensive line. I look at how the Rams, defensively with Ramsey, was able to shut down Gallup and Cooper. And I look at the Eagles' receiving core, and I don't see a lot of the same things. I don't see a lot of the same things. I look at Zach Ertz, only had 1 touchdown at the beginning of the game, but did nothing else besides that to keep moving forward. And I just think the Eagles have too many problems coming up that are going to cause them in this game against the Rams to not be able to win. Also, the Eagles have this weird home perspective where they have a losing record at home. And I'm just really not sold on the Eagles against this Rams defense who looked really well that they're going to be able to pull this off, especially with the injuries they had. So that's like the LA Rams here +2.5, and the LA Rams straight up. The next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Denver Broncos. I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers here to win because I just have faith in the Steelers defense. Because when you look at the Steelers defense, Cam Hayward's back. Minka's back. You have Joe Hayden. You have Sutton. You have Tuitt, Dupree. You have a loaded defense where the Broncos defense without Von Miller, I believe, will struggle mightily. I think that they will struggle mightily. I think it'll be very difficult for them to be able to stop anything that the Steelers have. I know they have Boye, and I know the Steelers offense is not that loaded at the receiving positions. It's not. it is not loaded at the receiving positions to really show that maybe they won't need Vaughn with the corners they have. And Drew Lock, he could, improve, and they have Lindsey and Gordon. But I'm just going to take the more experienced quarterback in this spot, in this game, to pull off a pretty significant victory for the Steelers to get to 2-0 in the season, if my predictions are correct. And the Broncos at 1-1 will move forward from that. Sounds like the Pittsburgh Steelers here to win straight up. That'll take the Denver Broncos +6. The next game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Carolina Panthers. This is one where I thought about taking Carolina +8, but I looked at it and I said the Panthers, Teddy Bridgewater, Matt Rule, and that offense, they look pretty good. Teddy Bridgewater had that big 75-yard touchdown to Robbie Anderson. Christian McCaffrey had an okay day. They put up 30 points, but they were playing the Raiders defense, who was not great. They gave a lot of big plays, and they had some typical Raider blunders. But that Raider offense, with Josh Jacobs getting 3 touchdowns, Henry Ruggs getting a big touchdown from Derek Carr, they didn't even Darren Waller that much. I just look at the fact that if the Raiders could put up 30-plus points, the Bucs can do the same thing. And I think the Bucs defense, though it had some flaws, a lot of the problems that the Bucs gave up points by were by Tom Brady by throwing those 2 interceptions, including 1 pick-6. They really did a good job on Michael Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders made some big catches, in big spots. Jared Cook, had a nice bit of drive connection there. He made some big plays. And I look at the Panthers offense and go, DJ Moore, their number 1 wide receiver, only had, I think, 4 receptions for about 30 yards. So you are going way down in terms of offensive quality from the Saints to the Panthers. And also, I just look at the Bucs and say that Tom Brady, whenever he loses a game, and by the way, here's a fun fact. In the 6 games that Drew Brees played Tom Brady, he has won 4 of those 6 games. So Drew Brees is better than Tom Brady in their head-to-head games, surprisingly enough. But I'm going to take the Bucs here because they're going to be at home. They're going to be irritated. They're going to be angry. And the Panthers, as great as they are, they still have Teddy. They still have Matt Rule. And they still have a young mismatch of guys that Tom can do a lot of things against Carolina that he couldn't do against New Orleans just due to their veteran coaching and their veteran talent around them. And I think it's going to be a pretty decisive statement for the Bucs that they can fire the cannons and effectively win this game in a good way. Do I think Carolina could play well? Maybe. Look, Tampa had a lot of penalties. They had 9 penalties. They were dysfunctional. Arians called out Brady. And there could be a lot of stuff going on that could cause Carolina just to play, hey, we're the underdog. We're going to play well. We're going to, try to do our best. And maybe we can pull off an upset or just be competitive. And I think the Panthers would take that. But Brady doesn't lose back-to-back games often. They're at home. And this Panthers team is nowhere near the talent that the Saints were. And I think that'll be the difference in why the Bucs win this game. So that's why Tampa Bay here, -8. And Tampa Bay straight up. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the Washington football team. I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals here just in the sense that I think Washington's defensive front is fantastic. I think Ron Rivera has shown that they have been more disciplined. Washington has shown that they can commit more to the run. Gibson made some nice runs, and their secondary did a good job with Jack Del Rio's help as the defensive coordinator. I just think when it comes to this game, I did not expect Arizona to win their Week 1 game the way they did. And when you just look at that, I just think it has to go to the fact that Kyler's the better quarterback, Kyler has the better weapons, and the Cardinals defense is a a good defense. And I feel like what's going to be the tougher challenge? Kyler going against Washington's defense or Haskins going against the Cardinals defense? I will take Kyler going up against the Cardinals defense any day of the week, based on what happened this past week. Do I think Washington can be competitive? Maybe. I think if, with that defensive front, with the lack of big names on the Arizona Cardinal offensive line, sure, I think Washington, if they can do similar things, they can make it competitive. But they're playing against Kyler, who's nowhere near as turnover prone as Carson Wentz is, and I think that'll be the difference in the game. I think, look, Washington's playing with house money here. They really had no expectation. The Cardinals, people had some high hopes for the Cardinals, and I think they showed up Week 1. I think they need to kind of show against a Washington team that's still trying to improve themselves, where the Cardinals have higher aspirations, especially with DeAndre Hopkins, like I said before, 14 receptions, career high for him. I do think the Cardinals, with all that being said, win this game effectively because I believe that Kyler's challenge against Washington's defense is much easier than what Dwayne has going against the Cardinal defense. So that's like Arizona here, -6.5, and Arizona straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a game where Kansas City has routinely beaten this division under Andy Reid from 2013 on in a pretty effective way. I think he's only had a handful of division losses with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. In fact, Mahomes has only lost one time against the Chargers through his 4 years now, and that was a 2 TD game that they blew it in Kansas City. So he's never lost in Los Angeles or in Mexico, whichever one they were, whichever one they're at. I looked at the Chargers team. They had a big injury at linebacker. And it just feels like, again, like the Chargers, they have talent and they showed a lot, but they still have that choking syndrome to where every time you watch the Chargers, you don't know, as well as that talent can be and as effective and as manageable as Tyrod can be, they can't capitalize. They can't generate consistent enough offense. And I just feel like with the Chiefs, they just practically roll out of bed with all the talent they have, and especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had a 100-yard game and a touchdown, the first rookie running back since Saquon did back in week 1 of 2018 to start off his career. I think the Chiefs offensively and defensively are too balanced and effective to beat a Charger team that can maybe compete with them on paper in positions and maybe have some advantages that the Chiefs don't. But the offense is just too potent for me against this Charger secondary. If Joe Burrow can make plays with Green, Ross, Boyd, Ozuma, then Patrick Mahomes can do that on steroids 100 times over with the Chiefs offense in this game. Do I think the Chargers, look, I think they're going to play with some house money. They now get to have the fun SoFi Stadium opening beginning. But I'm going to take the Chiefs here to win -8.5 because they're too loaded offensively. And the Chargers, as great as they were, let's be honest, they were just a pulled hamstring away from being once again in the choker category. And if you're going to take the defending champs or the chokers, I'm going to take the defending champs. That's all. Kansas City are -8.5, and Kansas City straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Houston Texans. This is one where the Ravens were the most complete team yesterday, and they whipped up on the Browns from pillar to post. And I look at the Texans, and I see a lesser talented version in most areas to the Browns. They don't have as nearly good an offensive line. They don't have the receivers that the Browns do. They don't have the running back that the Browns do. They don't have some of the defenders that the Browns do. And I just think it is going to be a very similar story to what happened on Thursday night for the Texans against Kansas City. And they had a rough history with us. Last year we beat them 41-7. We've had an awkward history of going down to Houston over the years. I think we've lost the last 2 or 3 times we've been in Houston. And I just feel like at this time, with all the momentum that we have, with the talent we have, with the lack of talent the Texans have, I just feel like it's going to be a very similar song and dance for the Texans, just like in week 1, except it might be a little bit worse. Because if we can hold the Browns to 6 points, I could say this with no hesitation. We can do the same exact thing against the Houston Texans. I'm genuinely surprised that the line is at 6.5. I thought that the Ravens could have been pushing near 10 with how these two teams played. If the Chiefs can cover 9.5, we can definitely cover 6.5 in this game. So anybody out there, take the Ravens -6.5. Make sure to take it now before the line moves, because honestly, I don't see how the Texans have any chance. And I'm not being a homer here. I'm just saying after I watched the 2 games in winning this game. So that's why I like Baltimore here, -6.5, and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the Seattle Seahawks over the New England Patriots. This is a game where, look, I got to give the New England Patriots a lot of credit. They ran the ball right down the Dolphins' throat. Cam Newton had 75 rushing yards. He also has the most rushing TDs for a quarterback in NFL history now, so congratulations to him. And the Patriots played an efficient game. They had about 240 yards. They got 2 or 3 turnovers on Fitzpatrick. Nick Folk missed a field goal, which is kind of which is the problem moving forward, but they don't have Gostowski. He's now in Tennessee. And I think, look, the Patriots, they know their formula. What they're going to do is they are basically going to, stick to a committed running game led by Cam Newton along with Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, Damian Williams when he comes back, and James White. they're going to play keep the ball away from the other quarterback. And I think that is the perfect strategy to play against Russell Wilson, who joined Steve Young as the only quarterbacks in NFL history to have 30,000 passing yards and 4,000 rushing yards. And again, this guy is only 32 years old, or 31 years old. He doesn't turn 32 back until November. And I just look at Seattle here, and look, Russell Wilson is undefeated in the regular season against the Patriots, 2-0. This will be the third meeting or the fourth meeting they've had. Obviously, I wish that Russell was 1-3, where he would have won the Super Bowl and lost all the regular season games, but that's a different issue for a different time. But I have to go with Seattle here because they just played a very efficient game against the Seahawks. I think that, again, Gilmore is going to be a problem for the Seahawks. But if Russell just ignores him or tests him very occasionally, the secondary really isn't that much more effective. And I just feel like the Seattle defense, they don't really have to worry about that much in terms of big-time receiving threats happening. Shaquille Griffin had an okay game. I know you could say, well, look, they gave up 130 to 100-plus yards to Julio, and how often they had 500 total yards offense given up. Sure, but I just feel like they were playing a defense in Atlanta, and Russell's just been too effective for that. I think he can overcompensate for that. And Jamal Adams had a big sack in his debut for the Seahawks. And I'm just going to look at the history here. Cam Newton, his entire career, has 2 victories and only 1 regular season victory in every game he played against Russell Wilson from 2012 to now. He's only won 1 time in the regular season in Seattle, and that came off a busted coverage for a Greg Olsen touchdown between Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas. I don't think that you're going to have that problem in this game because the Panthers aren't nearly as talented. Cam isn't as effective as he was in his MVP year. And I just think that the talent that the New England Patriots have, the Seattle defense can neutralize it enough to let Russell Wilson keep cooking against the Patriots team that was very fortunate to play the Dolphins. Again, can't blame your competition, but I'm going to take Seattle here. They're at home. They feel confident. They feel rested. Russell's playing at the highest level I have seen him over the last 17 games throughout his career. And I think that talent and that consistency at home in the Pacific Northwest powers them to a 3-0 record, and I believe it's 6 or 7 point against Cam Newton this next Sunday night in CenturyLink Field, in an empty CenturyLink Field. And also, one other key advantage, they're going to have more extra crowd noise piped in due to Seattle's common 12th man having the loudest stadium in the National Football League. So that's why I like Seattle here -4 and Seattle straight up. And finally, the New Orleans Saints over the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a game where the Saints are just clearly better. I think the Raiders, they showed a lot. They showed a lot offensively. Jacobs looked phenomenal. Carr played an efficient game, like I said before. And I think the Raiders, they could surprise the Saints a little bit. They could be more competitive than a lot of people are thinking, especially of how the Saints looked yesterday. But when I look at the Saints, I think what they're going to do is how committed they were to the running game and how limited they were in the passing attack. If you saw what the Panthers did, I think it'll be very much the exact opposite, where they're going to attack the Raiders secondary more with the receiving game and let the running game kind of take a pass. I just think the Saints, they are just too well-rounded. I like how Kamara played. He had 3+ touchdowns, or he should have had 4, but he stepped out of bounds. Murray had some nice effective touches. And I just looked at the Panthers' offense, and I said, there were moments where you're like, okay, like they could, have some big plays. They have equal kind of talents, just more of it. And I think the Saints defense, it shut down a pretty impressive, Bucs offense, the weapons they had. Basically, by the end of the game, Tom Brady was throwing to Scotty Miller and Godwin and pretty much gave up on Evans and Howard, even though Howard did give Brady's first passing touchdown as a Buck in the back. And Gronk really didn't do that much. I think the Saints, they can handle Darren Waller. If they take out Waller and they don't get burned by Ruggs, they should be okay to win this game by at least 7 points. And I just think, again, the Saints coming off a big victory against Tampa, they understand how much pressure is on this team for this year, especially with Drew, this probably being his final season. And I think the Saints show that after a big emotional victory, they don't have a letdown against the Raider team, who is 1-0 themselves, but just in a much different position of where they were fortunate to play a rebuilding Panther team than arguably one of the best team, or you could argue after 1 week, the best team in the NFC in the New Orleans Saints on Monday night. Should be an interesting game, though, because I do want to see if the Raiders can give the Saints a run for their money. So those are my thoughts and picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. good luck to all the players, the coaches, fellow prognosticators, fantasy players. I did an okay job in fantasy this week. I had Patrick Mahomes, who played okay. I hope he continues to play well. And everybody out there, please check out the other NFL YouTube prognosticators such as Keith Bailey, Gavin O'Connor, Half Moon's Picks, Andrew Warren, Sports Fan Entertainment, Logan Schiff, Keith Bailey, Rob Sports Show. Everybody out there, please check them out. And until next time, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Everybody out there, please stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and until next week, I will see you next time.